To the loser paying for our future. It cut through the room like a gunshot. Champagne glasses froze midair, a fork scraped awkwardly against a plate, and somewhere near the dessert table, someone coughed to cover the silence. But most just laughed, nervous at first, then genuinely. It wasn't just what he said, it was how casually he said it, like he'd been rehearsing that line for months. Like he thought it would make him legendary. I watched my wife throw her head back, laughing. Not that forced, polite laugh people give when they're pretending. No, this was genuine amusement. She put a hand on his chest and shook her head like, "Oh, you." And then, like it was all some improv skit, I saw her glance toward me, just to see if I'd play along. Her eyebrows lifted slightly. "You gonna laugh too, babe?" I didn't. I set down my glass, leaned back in my chair, and just said, "Classy." That's it. No outburst. No scene. No public meltdown. Just classy. Then I stood up, walked away, past the silent clumps of co-workers avoiding eye contact, past the interns trying not to look at me too long, past her friend Jenna, who opened her mouth to say something, then shut it. I didn't look back. I got in the car, drove home in silence, and by the time they were drunkenly dancing to Mariah Carey, I was sitting at my desk with the lights off and one file already open. Ironwood_acquisition_internal.docs. She stayed out until nearly 2 a.m. No texts. No calls. When she came in, heels clicking, mascara smudged in that, I swear I only had 2 drinks kind of way, I was in bed, lights out, pretending to sleep. She smelled like Prosecco and would smoke from the fire pit on the venue terrace. Slid under the covers without a word. But I heard her phone buzz. 3 times. All from the same contact. Guess who? She sighed, almost dreamily. Then whispered, like it was some kind of bedtime blessing. "I think that's the best Christmas party we've ever had." I didn't reply. She assumed I was asleep. But I wasn't. I was counting. Not sheep. No, I was counting signatures. My signature, to be exact. Because here's what she never asked during her 2-year crush on Mr. Future. Never asked why I was invited to the merger meetings. Never asked what I actually do when I travel for Q4 pre-audit. She just assumed I was some back-end finance guy with spreadsheets and a tucked-in shirt. She never once asked about the clause that made the Ironwood merger dependent on unanimous signature approval from all internal consulting officers. Guess who gets the last signature? Oh, and by the way, over 90% of people listening right now haven't hit the subscribe button. It may not seem like a big deal, but every subscription genuinely motivates our little team to keep bringing these stories to life. So if you're enjoying this, hit that button. It means a lot. Back to the story. The champagne wasn't even flat yet, and I already had the kill switch in my hand. Her future was printed in black and white, in an agreement that still had one unsigned line at the bottom, mine. I stared at that empty line and smiled. I wasn't angry, not in the way she probably expected. That would have been easier for her, actually. Anger is predictable. You can manage it, manipulate it, apologize your way through it. No, what I felt was colder, cleaner. Like when you finally realize a tooth's been dead for a while, and you stop trying to save it. You just rip it out and move on. So when she curled up next to me that night, thinking she'd gotten away with it, maybe even proud of her little trophy boy's bravado, she didn't realize she'd already lost. Because she thought the worst thing she'd done was let someone disrespect me in public. No, the worst thing she did was mistake my silence for weakness. And tomorrow morning, that mistake was going to start costing her everything. While she stumbled her way through karaoke and refilled her wine glass with whatever was left on the dessert table, I sat at my desk in the dark, the only light coming from my monitor and the soft blue glow of the router behind me. Quiet, steady, like a heartbeat. I didn't open Spotify. No dramatic playlist. No whiskey glass in hand. Just the slow, deliberate motion of a man opening the right folder with the wrong kind of calm that doesn't need background music. Ironwood Acquisition, Key Parties. Funny name for a folder, isn't it? I named it 6 months ago, back when she was still pretending to be excited about quarterly dinners and asking me if her heels matched her blazer before heading off to work. Back when her work husband was still just a footnote on her social calendar. Back when I still had a reason to believe this merger would happen clean. I opened the subfolder labeled Internal References. Inside were 5 documents, each tagged with the initials of key individuals. One caught my eye immediately, his legal name, Darius Matthew Langdon. Not D-Money, as he referred to himself during that idiotic Secret Santa game. His personnel record, ethics file, and internal referral letters were all scanned and signed. There was even a note from her in the corner of one PDF, Great addition to the team. High potential. A closer. A closer. I opened the pre-merger agreement. 42 pages, plus 2 appendices. Drafted with precision. Reviewed by the firm's counsel. Signed by all board-level officers from both sides, except one. Me. Last page. Bottom right corner. Signature, External Compliance Officer, ECO. Name. Blank. That's me. That's always been me. Technically external, but embedded enough to see the rot before it hits the roots. The clause itself is buried in legalese. Execution of final terms contingent upon full endorsement from ECO as per Section 14, B, reflecting conflict of interest clearance and ethics compliance. Conflict of interest. You could almost hear the irony laughing from the text. You see, in most cases, that clause is rubber-stamped. Just a formality. But I wrote it. Years ago, after a messy exit at another firm taught me that every castle needs a quiet man with a kill switch. I've only used it once before, and no one saw that coming either. I reread the clause. Slowly. Not because I forgot it, but because I needed to savor it. Needed to feel the tension in my shoulders loosen. I wasn't reacting. I wasn't panicking. I was executing a contingency I designed for moments just like this. What made it better? She had no idea this clause even existed. In fact, I'm not sure she ever once asked me what I actually did for the firm. Not beyond vague, finance compliance guesses. She assumed I handled spreadsheets. She never guessed I held veto power over the entire transaction. A transaction her golden boy had staked his entire career on. A transaction she'd leveraged to angle for a VP title in Q1. I sat back in my chair and stared at his file again. Darius Langdon. The man who toasted to my humiliation in a room full of my peers. The man who thought charisma could outmaneuver structure. Let me tell you something about structure. It never smiles, but it always wins. I minimized the window and opened my encrypted messaging client. I drafted a single message. No emotion. No grand speech. Just a timestamp. And a request. Need a call. 9 a.m. Eastern. Ironwood deal. Signature withheld. Details to follow. Recipient. Harlan Sue, Chairman, Eastern Equity Holdings. Harlan doesn't ask questions. We've played this game together before. He's a shark with a moral code. Never disrespect the chain. And never mock the man who signs the last box. I locked my system, closed the laptop, then sat in silence, listening. From the living room, I could hear the faint buzz of her phone, probably still lighting up from coworkers tagging her in party photos. Maybe a few selfies with Darius under the mistletoe. I wondered if she'd even remember what she said to me the next morning. Probably not. Drunk minds, sober truths. Whatever excuse she'd reach for would be irrelevant anyway, because she thought the celebration was just beginning. She didn't realize the deal was already dying, and the man she publicly mocked was writing her professional obituary, line by line, clause by clause, without ever raising his voice. The morning after the Christmas party, the world outside our windows looked like any other mid-December morning. Blue-gray sky, frost along the edges of the porch rail, the hum of the neighbor's leaf blower. It was quiet. Still, deceptively so. In the kitchen, the coffee brewed like clockwork. I poured a cup, sat at the table. She was still upstairs in bed, wrapped in our navy comforter like it was armor from the consequences she hadn't yet realized were already galloping toward her. Her phone buzzed on the counter next to me. Another ping from one of last night's Instagram stories. Champagne flutes. Lights. Him, smiling next to her like they were already co-owners of the future. I took my phone from my pocket and opened the secure line. Harlan picked up before the first ring finished. "Tell me," he said. "That's all. No greeting. No pleasantries. Just that clipped efficiency of someone who deals in billion-dollar assets and doesn't waste breath." I'm pulling my signature. A pause, but not a long one. Problem. Personal. Another pause, shorter this time. Then, with the tone of a man who'd already been expecting the storm, he said, "Names?" I gave them. First his, then hers. He exhaled. "Well, damn. All right." There was a beat of silence. Then, "You're sure?" I was sure last night. He didn't ask for more. That's the thing about people like Harlan. When someone like me says, personal, that's the only explanation required. He knew I wasn't sloppy. Knew I wasn't impulsive. If I was making a move like this, it meant the rot had reached the beams. "Consider it done," he said. "I'll alert compliance and legal. You'll get an updated doc by end of day." Click. No drama. No debate. Just quiet execution. It's funny. When people think about revenge, they picture shouting, threats, slammed doors. But real damage? Real power? That moves in silence. Over breakfast. in the time it takes to sip your first cup of coffee. Upstairs, I heard her stir. A soft yawn. Then the creak of our bed as she rolled onto her side. I watched her through the cracked door as she came down the hall barefoot, stretching, looking every bit like someone who thought the world loved her back. "Morning," she said sweetly. "Didn't even notice you get up. You okay?" "Perfectly fine." She kissed me on the cheek like she always did when she felt a little guilty, but not guilty enough to change. "Last night was wild, huh? Darius is insane. He always takes jokes too far." "Yeah," I said. "Insane." She made herself a cup of coffee and pulled out her laptop like it was any other Thursday. Replied to a few emails. Smiled at something on Slack. And just like that, she got back to building her little empire on a foundation I was quietly drilling holes into. There's a certain satisfaction in watching someone live in blissful ignorance while the scaffolding behind them starts to buckle. She spent the morning in sweats, talking about travel points and how she might ask for a bigger office next quarter. Her entire demeanor had the smug inertia of someone who thought she'd won. Someone who thought being clever and being untouchable were the same thing. They're not. Her lover, the great closer, had no idea his name was now flagged in a compliance hold. No idea that Harlan had already emailed the legal team with the subject line, "Remove Langdon Plus affiliate from Ironwood documents." Immediate. She smiled at her screen and asked me, "Do you want to take a trip in February? Maybe the Caymans? You need a break." I almost laughed. The woman pouring hazelnut creamer into her mug had no idea that within 72 hours, her golden boy was going to be locked out of his email, his keycard revoked, and his upcoming promotion scrubbed from internal decks like it never existed. And her? She thought she was married to the man who paid for the party. She never realized she was married to the man who owns the power to cancel it. I sat there at the table, reading the revised agreement Harlan had just emailed over. His assistant had already updated the document metadata. Clause 14 now flagged compliance hold pending final ECO review. In the comments section, note, pending removal of names as per personal conflict notification. I typed back only 2 words. Proceed accordingly. Then I closed the laptop. She was still talking about February. By the time she finds out February isn't coming, it'll already be spring for everyone else. Except her. Monday morning hit like a hangover that couldn't be blamed on alcohol. The kind of morning where everyone's just a bit too quiet. Eye contact feels radioactive, and no one knows if the tension in the air is real or just leftover from too much Christmas punch. Darius swaggered into the office around 10:45. No apology, no explanation. Just that same smug confidence he always wore when he thought the room belonged to him. His coat swung over one shoulder. Coffee in hand. He wore a new watch, probably a little reward for his own brilliance, something she might have bought him with our shared card. He stepped off the elevator like a man walking into his coronation. But this time, no one clapped. No inside jokes. No high fives. Even the receptionist barely nodded when she handed him his badge. He brushed it off at first, told himself people were just tired from the party. Still recovering. No big deal. Except people were whispering and glancing, and not just at him, but away from him, as if his presence made the air harder to breathe. By noon, his Slack went dark. That was the first tremor. At 12:06, his calendar pinged. "Please come to room 412, HR and legal." He assumed it was about the merger. Some paperwork. Maybe an early pat on the back. Instead, he walked into a conference room with 3 people already seated, none of them smiling. A folder sat closed in the center of the table. Legal counsel, director of HR, and someone from risk compliance whose name he didn't recognize. "Have a seat, Mr. Langdon." He did, still posturing, but slightly less certain now. They began softly, gently, as they always do when they're giving you a chance to hang yourself before they tighten the rope. "We're conducting a review of events that may have impacted the ongoing Ironwood integration." He frowned. "Events. There's been an anonymous report," the HR director said, folding her hands. "Specifically related to conduct that could be interpreted as a conflict of interest. Public behavior, workplace boundaries, and disclosures." He leaned back in his chair. "You've got to be kidding. This is about the Christmas party." "We're not focusing solely on the event," legal cut in. "We're assessing a pattern. We've reviewed communications. There are photos, internal Slack threads, meeting transcripts. Several suggest an unreported relationship with a currently married executive spouse." The smile slipped. Still, he laughed. "You're really reaching here? Who submitted this?" The compliance officer opened the folder. Inside, an excerpt from Clause 14b of the Ironwood Agreement. Darius stopped breathing for a second. That clause. He hadn't read it, not really. He skimmed the terms like he always did. Assumed the suits upstairs handled the real power. Assumed ECO was some faceless position in legal. He didn't know it was me. Clause 14, B. The compliance officer read aloud. Prohibits internal parties from engaging in undisclosed conflicts that materially affect merger integrity. Violations invalidate executive oversight. The HR director spoke again, a little slower this time. You're currently listed in violation due to your romantic involvement with the spouse of the firm's compliance officer. That's grounds for termination and legal review, depending on impact. His mouth opened. Nothing came out. He blinked, then forced a smirk. Wait. You're telling me this is because I'm seeing L. He stopped. Caught himself. Too late. Because you're seeing the wife of the man whose signature you needed to finalize the merger? Legal asked. Silence. For once in his life, Darius had nothing clever to say. We'll be continuing this review, HR said. But you are not to discuss this with any employee, and we're revoking access to shared systems until further notice. The compliance officer added, without looking up from the file, please hand in your badge. And just like that, the golden boy handed over his plastic crown. By 1:15 p.m., his desk was empty. His calendar blocked out. His inbox, deactivated for security audit. She didn't know yet. She was across the city, eating lunch with two of her work friends, probably reliving the party and planning their Q1 goals. Her phone buzzed. She looked at the screen, rolled her eyes. Darius, she said, probably whining about HR being uptight. She didn't answer. She didn't know the avalanche had already started, that her kingdom had already lost its prince, that his crown was plastic and now melted in a boardroom trash bin. But he knew, and he was starting to spiral. Tuesday started quiet. Too quiet. She woke up humming in the shower, full of that smug, post-party energy she always got when she thought she'd won something. She floated around the kitchen like a woman who thought life had just clicked into place, her boy toy angling for VP, her own title, under review for expansion, and a merger on the verge of unlocking a new office, new clients, new power. Her phone buzzed. She glanced at the name, Catherine Leal, legal lead. She declined it. Not now, she muttered. Another ping. This time a calendar update. Merger hold. All integration activities suspended. She stared at the screen, blinked, then shrugged. Tech glitch. But across town, in a conference room lined with acoustic panels and million-dollar nerves, the lead counsel wasn't blinking. She was flipping pages, redlining terms, and delivering one quiet sentence that detonated the entire operation. Terms compromised. Key signatures withdrawn. We halt integration until this is resolved. No one dared ask whose signature. They knew. They just didn't say it. The room went cold. Emails flew. Phones buzzed across 3 cities. HR updated the staff call logs. The internal Slack channel locked mid-thread. At 11:17 a.m., the acquiring firm released a vague press bulletin on their site. Due to internal concerns and compliance considerations, the proposed Ironwood transaction has been suspended indefinitely. The stock dipped. Not dramatically, but just enough to get board members calling each other behind closed doors. By 12:45, Darius Langdon was being walked out of the building. No yelling, no security alarm, just a quiet escort down the hallway by 2 HR reps and a man from Risk who refused to make eye contact. His badge had already been deactivated. His desktop login timed out. His Slack handle marked as suspended, inactive for audit. His desk lamp, which he left on that morning like he always did, still glowed. He passed coworkers who didn't say a word. No nods. No, what happened, bro? Just a trail of silence. As if the floor was trying to erase his footsteps as he left. Someone whispered, he's the reason the deal tanked. Someone else, he slept with the wrong woman. But the one that lingered in the air like smoke. You know her husband? He's the one who signed off on compliance. Except now, he hadn't. Darius didn't cry, didn't scream, just walked out, head tilted back, jaw clenched, as if trying to keep his pride from falling out of his mouth. That same pride that toasted me in front of a room full of strangers. And her? She didn't even know yet. Until 2:06 p.m., when her office phone rang. Not her cell, her direct line. She looked at the caller ID and sat up straighter. Raymond Teague, CEO. She answered cheerfully, Ray. Hey, is this about the statement? I was just about to reach out. Don't, he said. One word. Flat. Cold. She blinked. Sorry. Don't speak, he repeated. Just listen. He paused. Then, your boyfriend is done here. Finished. Tell him to never step foot in this office again. Her mouth opened, then shut. And you, he continued, you should call your husband. A beat of silence. And start begging. Click. She sat there in her leather chair, the faint hiss of the disconnected line still humming in her ear. Her smile cracked. The walls seemed suddenly closer. Her desk too wide. Her fingers trembled on the edge of her keyboard as she stared at nothing. Something had gone wrong. Terribly wrong. And for the first time since the party, the confidence drained from her face. Because this wasn't just about a boyfriend being inappropriate. This wasn't some HR wrist slap. No, this was infrastructure collapsing. Deals. Reputations. Careers. She looked at her phone, considered calling Darius, then stopped. Because deep down, beneath the panic, beneath the shock, there was a cold little whisper in the back of her mind asking one simple question. What if this wasn't a reaction? What if it was a plan? She broke every speed limit on the way home. Didn't even grab her coat from the office. Just stormed out with her heels clicking like gunshots across the tile, eyes wide, breath short, muttering, "No, no, no, no," under it. The doorman nodded politely as she stormed through the lobby. She didn't see him. Didn't see the neighbor in 4B waving either. She only saw the front door. And when she pushed it open, when she stumbled into the silence of the home, she thought she still understood. He wasn't there. The first thing she noticed was the absence of noise, of life, of him. No familiar coffee smell. No shoes by the door. No coat on the rack. Just clean silence, like a museum after hours. But on the dining table, dead center like a placement card at a funeral, sat one small item, a brushed silver key. Old, simple, polished. And next to it, a single piece of paper. His handwriting. Calm. Straight. Almost annoyingly neat. All further communication will be handled by counsel. You'll want to keep this. It opens a box you'll need soon. She didn't understand. Not fully. Not yet. She stared at the key, then turned around the room slowly, like it might all vanish if she moved too fast. The closet? Half empty. Drawers? Cleared. The leather portfolio he always used when traveling gone. And then it hit her. He's not staying at his brother's. He's not at the office. He's gone. In every sense of the word. She scrambled to the study. She didn't know what she was looking for until she saw it. On the bottom shelf behind the faux law books she'd bought for decoration. A black metal lockbox she forgot even existed. He used to keep it locked during tax season. Said it was for receipts and warranty papers. She knelt on the rug and slid in the key. It turned. With a soft click, her world started collapsing. Inside, stack after stack of printed emails. Hundreds. All neatly labeled by week. Correspondence between her and Darius. Flirtations. Plans. Nude attachments. Reservation confirmations. Hotel loyalty numbers. Even one receipt for a dinner he expensed under client entertainment, with a handwritten note in her handwriting. Still can't believe we got away with that. Black heart. She froze. Below the emails, a manila folder labeled Documented Incidents, Conflict Timeline. Inside, annotated calendars. Dates marked with "She told me she was at the gym," or "Anniversary she forgot." Confirmed she was in Denver, not New York. Photos from parking garages. One showing her entering a hotel at 11:46 p.m. alone. Another, leaving at 4:12 a.m. with Darius beside her. She flipped faster, heart thudding. Screenshots from their private Slack messages. Even one where she joked, "We should just run off and let my walking paycheck fund our escape." She covered her mouth. There was no yelling in these documents. No accusations. Just a methodical dismantling of her lies, archived with precision. This wasn't rage. This wasn't a tantrum. This was evidence. Curated. Timestamped. Cross-referenced. She opened the last envelope, the one labeled Contingency Packet, Legal. Inside, she found a draft separation agreement. One copy. Unfiled. Yet, the final page had a sticky note. "You always said you wanted freedom. Consider this your Christmas bonus." That's when the shaking started. Her hands trembled as she put the pages back in the box. Slowly, like touching them too hard might trigger something worse. Like there might be more. Because now she understood, this wasn't a reaction. This wasn't about a party toast. This was a war that had already ended. She just didn't realize she'd lost. Everything about this screamed premeditated. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't slam a door. He simply disappeared and left behind the forensic footprint of a man who'd been planning this for a long, long time. And the worst part? She never saw it coming, because she never thought he was capable of this. But he was. And now, she had nowhere left to run. Darius spent Tuesday evening calling in favors like his life depended on it. Because it did. His first call went to Brent from strategy. No answer. Then to Elena in comms, straight to voicemail. He tried the CFO's assistant, then legal's junior partner. Nothing. Not even a sympathetic text. By Wednesday morning, he was pacing his apartment in socked feet, still wearing the same shirt from the day before. The confident smirk was gone. His voice cracked mid-sentence when the fourth call in a row ended in a polite but cold, "Sorry, I've been advised not to get involved." He wasn't just being frozen out. He was radioactive. The same people who used to toast to his rising star status were now scrubbing him from calendar invites and clearing shared folders. One contact even quietly suggested he remove his name from LinkedIn for a while, just until things cool off. He thought he could fix it. Thought this was just a rough patch. Thought he still had pull. But here's what he didn't know. He'd never had the pull. Not really. He was just riding on someone else's goodwill. And that goodwill? That had a face. A quiet, observant, compliance officer face. The same man he tried to humiliate over shrimp cocktails and lukewarm Merlot. See, over the past 6 years, I didn't just attend quarterly meetings. I built quiet alliances. I played long games during golf scrambles. I learned the names of people's spouses, their kids, the college their daughter didn't get into and still complains about. I donated to the right charity events. Took calls at midnight from stressed-out VPs. Covered internal errors that never made it to upper management. I didn't network. I embedded. So when it came time to pull a few threads, those threads pulled back. Hard. And every door Darius knocked on was one I had already locked. Meanwhile, she was still clinging to the illusion that her job was safe. She sat at her desk on Wednesday morning, trying to catch up on flagged emails and group threads she hadn't been copied on for 2 days. She sent a chipper update to her division head, suggesting they loop her back in. He didn't reply. At 10:13 a.m., she got a calendar update titled, "Compliance Review, Undisclosed Relationship Disclosure Meeting." She clicked on it 4 times, hoping it would change. It didn't. It was set for 3 p.m. that day. And the attendees? Legal, HR, risk. Not a single ally in sight. She called her own assistant. "Hey, do you know what this is about?" A pause. Then, "They didn't tell you?" Her stomach dropped. When 3 p.m. came, she walked into the glass-walled conference room with the posture of someone who still thought charm was a shield. But the room was colder than she expected. Fewer smiles. More paper. The lead from HR opened with a line that hit harder than anything Darius had faced. "You were required to disclose any romantic entanglements that may compromise internal partnerships, especially during merger-sensitive periods." She blinked. "That's a stretch, isn't it? I mean, I didn't even work on the deal directly." "We're not discussing technicalities," the legal rep said flatly. "We're discussing integrity. The perception of impropriety. You should know better. You helped draft these policies." That's when it hit her. The irony came slow, but heavy. She hadn't helped draft those policies. Her husband had. He was the original author. The one who built the framework for board compliance 6 years ago. The one she used to tease about being boring for reading policy language in bed. The man she called a loser while sipping Pinot Grigio next to the guy who just got exiled. Now the board was quoting his words back to her, like scripture. And they weren't smiling. She tried to push back, tried to float excuses. It was personal. It didn't affect performance. I kept things professional. But the room didn't care. Because the deal collapsed. A scandal was brewing. And someone had to be held accountable. By the time she left the meeting, her security clearance had been flagged for review. Her keycard downgraded. Her leadership channels restricted. Pending investigation. Pending. Such a small word. But when tied to your name, it becomes a noose. She sat in her car for 20 minutes, engine off, just staring at the dashboard. She wasn't crying. Not yet. She was still too stunned for tears. Because the walls weren't just closing in, they were evaporating. Her lover was gone. Her position was cracking. And the man she underestimated? He wasn't just surviving. He was winning, without ever raising his voice. She lasted 3 days. 3 days of checking her phone every hour. Of rereading that HR email so many times it started feeling like a breakup letter. 3 days of listening to silence from people who used to CC her on everything, who used to knock before walking into her office, who used to treat her name like it mattered. Now, they barely made eye contact in the hallway. Her inbox was quieter than a funeral home on Christmas Eve. No replies to her follow-ups. No updates on her review. Just radio silence, and the echo of her own humiliation growing louder by the hour. She hadn't heard from Darius since his walkout. Not that she expected to. He was somewhere licking his wounds, probably trying to decide which new city to flee to before word spread too far. But it was her husband's silence that ate her alive. He hadn't called, hadn't texted, not even a passive-aggressive email or lawyer ping. Just nothing. That was worse than yelling, worse than fighting. It was as if she'd already been deleted, and he was just letting the rest of the world catch up. And that stupid silver key sat on her nightstand like a ghost. Every time she looked at it, it whispered a reminder. He planned this. You were always 2 steps behind. By the 3rd night, she hadn't slept more than 3 hours total. She couldn't eat, couldn't think. The blinds were drawn tight in the apartment, like they were holding the world out, or holding her in. Finally, around 11:42 p.m., she opened her contacts. His name was still there, not deleted, just untouched. H. She stared at the screen, thumb hovering, then tapped. It rang once, and he picked up. Not a groggy hello, not a confused "who is this?" Just one word, calm and sharp like glass. Yeah. She exhaled too hard. I'm sorry. Silence. I didn't mean for it to get that far, she rushed. It was supposed to be a joke. He always took things too far. I didn't expect. You didn't expect consequences. His voice was colder than the key. I didn't know what he would say at the party, she whispered. I was embarrassed. I should have shut it down. I didn't think you'd take it so seriously. I didn't, he said. Not at first. But I took you seriously. That's the part you never understood. She swallowed. It was a mistake, she said. I'm sorry. Really. I know I hurt you. He didn't respond. She kept going. Is it too late? Can we talk? Can we just reset? There was a pause. Then he said, he went too far. Yes. But so did you. I know. But unlike him, he continued, evenly, I had a fallback plan. Her mouth went dry. You think this started last week, he added. You think this was spontaneous? You toasted to your future, he said. I'm just giving it to you. And then he hung up. No goodbye, no softening, just the finality of a phone line going dead. She sat there, holding the phone to her ear long after the silence settled, hoping maybe he'd call back, that maybe it wasn't real. But he didn't. And he wasn't hurt anymore. He wasn't angry. He was done. And now, the only person left trying to resuscitate the story was her. But the chapter had already ended, and the author had already moved on. By Friday, the silence was no longer just eerie, it was suffocating. Darius was officially out. Not on leave, not under review, terminated. The internal memo went out late Thursday night, phrased in vague HR dialect. Following the findings of an internal compliance investigation, Darius Langdon is no longer employed with the firm, effective immediately. We wish him the best in his future endeavors. They didn't wish him anything. Everyone knew it. By morning, his office had been cleared. His name scrubbed from project rosters. Even his picture on the internal directory? Gone. Replaced with the default silhouette. Not suspended. Not archived. Erased. She saw it on her dashboard that morning. Just a blank space where he used to be. Then her own email locked up. A cold banner at the top of the screen. Access limited, pending contract status. She clicked furiously through her permissions. Her documents. Her Slack. Blocked. Blocked. Read only. Then came the meeting invite from HR. End of term review, contract conclusion process. No one said fired. No one ever does. Instead, they said, we've decided not to renew your leadership contract at this time. With smiles that didn't reach their eyes and voices that sounded more like scripts than apologies. No accusations. No finger pointing. Just distance. She asked about her severance package. They said it was under review by legal. Given the nature of the ethical concerns raised, she tried to argue it wasn't fair, that she hadn't broken any clauses. They didn't argue back, because they didn't have to. The fallout wasn't just administrative, it was reputational, and it spread like rot. By the weekend, whispers had made their way through every firm within 2 zip codes. Weren't they involved in that merger collapse? I heard she was sleeping with the guy who tanked the deal. She used to be solid. Now, liability. She applied to 3 firms before Saturday was over. Places she used to scoff at. Startups she once mentored. Boutique agencies she could have bought out 2 years ago. Rejected. No interviews. No explanations. Just polite no thank yous and long pauses when her name showed up in applicant tracking systems. It wasn't official, but it was real. She was blacklisted. And it wasn't just professional circles turning cold. Her friends, the ones who laughed at the party, who shared in the champagne and the smug giggles, vanished. Her group chat went silent. Her invites disappeared. Even Jenna, her closest confidant, stopped replying. When she called her directly, it went to voicemail. Twice. On the third try, Jenna finally answered. "Hey," she said, voice low. "Jenna, please. I need just 10 minutes. Can we talk?" A long pause. Then, "I think it's better if we just give it space, okay?" Click. Everyone she once entertained, once charmed, once made the center of the joke, they were gone. Because now she was the punchline. And no one laughs when it's your turn to be the cautionary tale. She went through her phone that night, scrolling through texts from just a few weeks ago, glowing praise, insider scoops, dinner invites, power women brunch threads. Now, nothing. The woman who used to walk into a room and command attention now couldn't get a table at her regular bistro without getting the side eye from a junior associate who'd once asked her for a mentorship coffee. She sat in the quiet of her apartment, blinds drawn, glass of wine untouched, laptop closed, jobless, connectionless, futureless. And the most bitter irony of all, no one would say it to her face. No one needed to. The people who used to circle around her like moths weren't angry. They were just done. Just like he was. The man she mocked. The loser she thought was beneath her. The one person who never raised his voice. He didn't need to destroy her. He just needed to stop protecting her. And now, for the first time in her life, she understood what true exile felt like. Not being screamed at. Just being invisible. It took exactly 38 days. 38 days from the night Darius lifted his glass and sneered. To the loser paying for our future. To the morning her ex-husband's name headlined the financial section of every major outlet in the region. New merger. Same firm. Different leadership. Ironwood hadn't collapsed. It had restructured. Efficiently. Quietly. Brutally. At the core of it all, him. The man she thought was boring. Predictable. Weak. The one she dismissed with a smirk and a whisper. The man who left the party without a word. Now seated at the head of the new table. His name was listed first on the press release. Lead strategic advisor, Henry Mercer. The headline said it clean. Ironwood regains stability under new executive oversight. Revised terms restore market confidence. No drama. No dirt. Just a subtle nod that the chaos had passed. And order, his order, was now in place. She read the article twice. Then watched the footage. It played on every business channel. A new boardroom. Floor-to-ceiling windows. Chrome chairs. Men and women in dark suits nodding with polite, reverent smiles. He sat at the center. Not at the side. Not in the background. The center. The man who once stood quietly behind her at office functions. Who carried her coat while she air-kissed people who barely remembered her name. He was now the one shaking hands at the top floor deal signing. A woman leaned over and asked him a question. The audio was muffled, but clear enough. What happened with the last deal? He looked up, pen in hand, smile absent. It was compromised, he said, voice even. But we fixed that. Then he signed. The cameras clicked. Applause followed, not thunderous, but steady, respectful, real. And across town, sitting in her darkened apartment in a robe she hadn't bothered to wash in 2 weeks, she watched it unfold on the muted screen. Her hand gripped a chipped coffee mug that used to be part of a matching set. Her thumb traced the handle like it might give her answers. She didn't blink, didn't move, just stared. His posture was different now. Straighter, measured. He wasn't hiding anymore. He was home in that seat. There was no part of this world she could touch now. Not through favors. Not through apologies. Not through tears. She tried. Sent 2 emails. One to legal. One to a mutual contact. Both bounced back with a polite redirection to external counsel. Her name wasn't blacklisted anymore. It was irrelevant. People didn't talk about her. They just stopped mentioning her altogether. The woman who used to laugh too loud at the Christmas party, who used to say, "He's harmless, just harmless Henry," was now watching the man she minimized redefine the company she once tried to climb. He didn't humiliate her. He didn't destroy her. He simply outlasted her. And when the camera panned back across the boardroom, showing each partner shaking hands with the new leadership, he stood slowly, buttoned his jacket, and nodded to the room. The video ended there. She sat in silence. And suddenly, that toast, to the loser paying for our future, echoed back like a curse. Because the loser won. Without yelling. Without threatening. Without needing revenge. He just let her fall. And then calmly took his seat at the table she thought she owned. The last move was quiet. But the message couldn't be louder. This was never your future. It was mine.